Welcome to our discussion about CSS, and today we're talking about inline and internal CSS. So let's go back first to our discussion. Our discussion last time is about external CSS, and like what you have said there in external CSS, it is actually used for multiple HTML, and other programmers and encoders actually prefer external CSS because they are separated from the HTML files and they are organized as well. But internal CSS is used by some of the programmers because they want one of the HTML web pages to be more unique to the other web pages that are very similar but not entirely the same as the other one. For today, we will be discussing HTML, or rather, internal and inline CSS. And actually, your internal can also be converted into external CSS by just adding another link here, link href, for example, is equal to internal.css. So you just basically create another CSS file and then do the same thing, and your internal CSS will be like that. Then don't place that inside or don't link that inside of the other HTML, and that will work the same as your internal CSS. But for the sake of our discussion, we will assume that we are just using an internal CSS for a single HTML purpose only. So, how do we actually add an internal CSS? So, here at that head container, we will leave that link href, and then we place here style tags. Okay, the style tags are paired tags, so style, and then let us place here slash style so that we will not forget it. um, Pro tip for you: whenever we have pair tags, do not forget the closing tags. And in order for us not to forget it, once you place the opening tag, directly place the closing tag, and then after that you place the attributes if it is necessary. Now, for the style and for the style tags, we use the same properties here. We have selector, and then we have the curly brackets. We have the property, the colon, the value, and then the semicolon. So for example, we want to edit the h2 here. So h2, we want to edit your h2 as a, so don't forget the brackets. Let's have underline for your h2. So to place an underline, text, decoration. You can, by the way, find this properties and values in W3 schools. W3 schools is very, very, very helpful for those who are encoding in HTML and then CSS codes. Okay, so text decoration, underline. So uh, let's leave this like that, and then let us add another one. Probably let us edit your OL. Is it possible for me to use the same kind of characteristic? For example, you want the font size of the ordered list and the unordered list to be 12, and but you do not want it to be typed more than once. That is actually possible. What was I actually talking about? So for example, OL and then UL. So we want both our ordered list and unordered list to have the same properties. So what we will do here, so curly braces again. So let us place a size of 20. So font size. Your font size comes in ems or pixels. For now, we will be discussing about pixels, but personally, my choice is ems. But for clarity's sake, let's use pixels first. So let us have 20 pixels. Don't forget the semicolon. So let's try it. Control S. It is for this kind of HTML. So go back to your favorite web browser. So this is it. Refresh it. As you can see, there is already an underline in your H2 and your OL as well as your unordered list transformed into 20 pixeled font. So that is the purpose of your internal CSS. Now, if we go back to this other web page and refresh this, as you can see, the H2 did not change, and then your sizes here are still the default sizes. That means that your internal CSS is actually implementing only on that HTML where you actually place it. Now, there is something quite peculiar about this. Peculiar about this part. Now, what happens is that, for example, let us have H1 here. Okay, H1, and then we place here color. Mm, green, for example. Now, remember our discussion about cascading? That those at the bottom is more important than the ones at the top. So what happens is that if we place this above this link, href, okay, so let's just indent it here. What happens is that if this is here and we save it, notice that here h1 is assigned as color green, but in our external CSS here h1 is assigned as color white. Okay, so save it, check this portion here, and when we refresh it, nothing changes. Okay, so nothing changes, but if we cut this again and place it here below the link, and when we save this, refresh your web page, your h1 changed. Okay, so that is an example of your cascading style sheet. So it checks which is at the bottom part, if the color white is at the bottom part or if the color green is at the bottom part. And because this is at the bottom part and this color white here is at the upper part, it follows the color green instead. Are we getting it so far? Hopefully listeners are getting it. Okay? So that is the reason why it is called cascading style sheets. Okay? Now, let us go to your internal CSS. Or rather, that is already the internal CSS. Let us now go to your inline CSS. Your inline CSS is very similar to your attributes. Okay? So, let us go to your tables, for example. And let us add a background color for the tables. And in order to place background colors, or more generally, we want to place inline CSS, so we place style. Okay, this is quite different from this part, but we will still use the same concept. Style is equal to quotation marks. Okay, so inside the quotation marks will be the selector, and then, sorry, you don't need a selector because this is already the selector, the table. It is already our selector. So what we will place here is a property and the value. Now, for example, our background here, background color, We want it to be white. And then we want to place here the border color is blue. So let us try it. So save it. So when we place the inline CSS, it is very similar to an attribute. So style is your attribute, this is the value, and then inside the value you have the property and then the property value. If you have more than one property and value, you separate it with comma. And so let us start this already. Save it and then run this in your browser. When we refresh this, as you can see, it changed your color here. However, it is not visible, so let us change the border here to around 5. Okay, so let's go back here. So you can see it already changed the color as blue here. Now, let us try changing this into color white. What will happen? Nothing. So let's just change the color white here so that we can actually see what's happening into font size. Font size or font family. And then let us select Times New Roman. For now, we will place here serif. Okay, serif meaning it has tails, so it should look similar to your Times New Roman or Garamond. Control S, and then am I actually editing the correct data? Anyway, so let's just grab this all together now. Okay, so let's just place this one instead, and then place another inline CSS here. Here we will place a style is equal to font family serif. Let's see if it will work. Control S, and it did. As you can see here, it changed the font from a sans serif into a serif. Okay, so your inline CSS is the top priority. So whenever you have inline CSS, it will override whatever you've placed inside the internal and then inside of the external CSS. So that is the importance of your inline CSS. That is very similar to your attribute, but in order to have some uniformity, we use inline CSS. So that is basically the three types of CSS: your external, your inline, and then your internal CSS. Now, our next discussion will be how to use your colors, how to use your font designs, your font sizes, your text decorations, and then hopefully we will be able to discuss about your borders, your tables, the margins, and the width. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to go to W3 Schools, and if you are already good to go, let us go to our next topic. Thank you.